Cool. First thing up is Web IDE strategy revisit, which will also be fun. I mean, I think you've paid attention to the MR, that there's been no consensus, no progress. Actually, since the last round of revisions that I made, there hasn't been any feedback either. So Eric and I have talked about this a bit, and what we're thinking over the next year is that we look at what we have talked about too, like quality of life, performance improvements, those types of things that we knew we wanted to do anyways, but weren't sure where they fit in with kind of the other strategy that we were thinking about anyways. So now this puts the pressure on to go find these things a little bit sooner. So I think there's two things. Is one, we kind of need to start thinking about those things and go finding issues. And I know you've linked to one that you think would be good in 12.6. I actually have no idea what capacity for 12.6 looks like with like the bleed over of search and other stuff, but I agree. The other thing is I'm going to have to rewrite the strategy again to capture what we think the next 12 months of work looks like, which is fine. I know we have consistently, one of the things that we were trying to solve was like this persona conflict. My ask is like, what are your thoughts on rationalizing this in a go forward way where like this is the Web IDE? Also, I guess the additional context would be that there is a static site editor group. So maybe we don't have to talk about that persona and use case. Maybe we leave like the same stuff in there that we had before about like we're not solving for them, but I don't know what your thoughts are on this, because it is going to be, it's like this middle ground of IDE editor thing.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to solve for these different personas. First of all, what do we actually already have any vision for the static site editor? Like, is there anything that has been discussed? Are they going to use the Web IDE? Are they not? What's the general idea?
Eric asked me this morning. I'm trying to see if this got merged. It did. So I guess it would be GitLab product categories. Static site editor. So they have a strategy for the static site editor group, which basically says they want to enable static site editing, and it shouldn't require technical skills.
Sounds like what we had in mind for the Web IDE.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's just like, well, so I think it's a different version of solving this, right? I think they're looking at things like forestry.io and Netlify CMS, which put a WYSIWYG GUI in front of Markdown, right? Versus, I think we would have approached it from the I think the Web IDE group, even still, like thinking about this, we're probably still likely to approach it from like a write in Markdown, but we'll give you a better preview version. Whereas they're going to approach it from a like write in rich text and like, don't worry about the Markdown. So I think like there's not a lot of overlap. The question would be like, would they be using components of the Web IDE? Like, would they use the single file like Monaco component? And I think my answer is probably no. Right? Because if the single file Monaco component's written around like editing in Markdown and their experience isn't editing in Markdown, they're probably unlikely to use it.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a lot of overlap in like the tech pieces of this. I also think they're trying to solve a different problem than we want to solve. The only, I don't think there's a lot of overlap. I also think because they're focused on handbook first, like we probably don't have to be as concerned with that persona, like dealing with the internal pressures that we have been dealing with of like making that better. So I'm comfortable still saying like we're not focused on those users, but that we're also not really like focused on solving. We're focused on like 20% of our technical users use cases and not even like solving more of those even.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting because first of all, that static site editor will probably take a bit longer to get like the first MVP set up. Or do you expect something faster?
I think it depends. So like, I think the first thing they want to do out of the gate is do like a technical sprint to see. So like the engineers already exist, is my understanding, because they're coming out of growth. They're like full stack engineers. So they're not even like front end and back end engineers. They're full stack from growth. And I think like the initial thought is like upgrading the version of Middleman. So like which is like low user impact, but allows us to like do some other features. And I think the other thing they want to do is like, could they layer in, I think the other thing they want to try really fast is could they use Netlify CMS? Because if they could use that, then they're basically like solved for the handbook side, right? Like, but if they, and like, I don't know how long that takes, but I don't think they're like, I don't think the initial plans are built from scratch.
I'm a bit curious still how much of that will only affect GitLab handbook versus all other companies out there who deal with the static stuff.
It's two different categories. Just like we have, so they're operating under two different categories. So they're operating under one thing that will get built that may or may not be a part of the GitLab application that is purely focused on the handbook.
Mm-hmm.
And then longer term, they will focus on static site editing for not the handbook. As two different things, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm gonna have a look at Netlify because I haven't had the chance yet. What else is important for me to understand right now? So when we're looking at the target users that we had, where we basically wanted to cover almost everyone, but leave out the heavy dev stuff, that's still the plan, correct?
Say that one more time.
When we're looking at the current direction page of the web IDE, it talks about the target users as everybody who works on any kind of software project, which could be product manager, designer, right. But we are not yet focused on heavy dev tasks in the web IDE.
That's what correct? The current strategy says.
Yeah. Do we want to push that forward as it is right now, or do we want to?
Yeah, I mean, that was my ask to you. I think I am inclined to say that we, I like the target persona pieces of the new strategy that isn't going to get merged. I like that more in terms of thinking about it from technical use cases. I also think that helps simplify the scope and helps us focus on things we want to go solve. And I think it helps us think about prioritization. So like when stuff comes up where people are like, this doesn't work for the handbook or it doesn't do XYZ, then like it gives us a way to say like, sorry, that's not important to us. Like, and also there's this other group that like this is important to them. And so like maybe they're a better place to like deal with that. And like I imagine there'll be some overlap until there's something set up for like the handbook. But like I think it gives us a way to like justify and rationalize like what we're doing in a way that like I don't think going away from like the container-based thing changes that we want to solve for an engineering persona. And I think we just want to do that differently. And I think we're going to need to look at like different things that we could do in the web IDE. Like Eric and I spent in literally 30-second thought, but we've had this thought in multiple other places already before. It was like code review. Maybe we start looking at the web IDE and going, well, if we're sticking with this web IDE for the foreseeable future and it's already built into GitLab, like, and you could open a merge request from that, like maybe we just open the merge requests there, and like maybe you can do multi-line comments and all your comments and patches or whatever you want inside of there, and you can all that exist in the Web IDE UI, and you don't have to go anywhere else. Like maybe that's a thing that we go solve that we weren't planning on solving originally because we were looking at like runtime environments and other things, but maybe we just use the Web IDE as like this tool to enable these other things versus thinking people will do engineering work in them.
I know somebody who's in this call who's very happy about this right now.
That's just because I said the word patches.
I was glad that you said the word patches. I was like, yes.
I added it only because you were here. It's like, oh, you know, he wants patches. We should just, but like that. I mean, I think like if we think about the Web IDE in that sense, like it makes sense to think about those kinds of things that are different than the kinds of things that we were gonna go do, but that I think are achievable in our existing tech stack for the Web IDE.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's sorry about. Yeah, it sounds like there's some recent tough discussions about Theia, and I'm sorry about. It's bittersweet because we're back at this little bit of a green field, and that's exciting. But yeah, I know it's a little bitter because there's a lot of investment put into Theia already, just in discussion and evaluation work. But
yeah, I mean, I think it's. I get it. I think it's tough from like a looking at it in like cool tech, and like it would have been very interesting, but hard to justify the business side of it. I also think it's like there was, at least my perspective was, there's like noticeable excitement in the engineering team, like when we would talk about it and like the things we could go do with it. And like I'm worried that like resetting expectations now and like getting people excited about the stuff we want to go do is like harder again. Like I'm back at like this like there's like that.
All you had to do is say patches, and I'm all excited now.
Paul, you're too easy, Paul. Like all patches, I'll be fine.
Yeah. No, just never mind me until I came here because Marcel mentioned like on a UX on the UX call, maybe we could talk about this one issue.
Yeah.
But I thought the call was later today, so I realized, oh, this is in the middle of it, so I hopped on. But never mind me.
We close it. So I am. I think. I mean, Marcel, would you say we're good with? Let's go with like the personas described in the new strategy, and then we'll figure out how to rationalize that.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think I can actually see some design ideas how to keep the flow very simple, but also branch off in a couple of more complex cases like patches, like other stuff. But I think really if we can put this issue where we talked about like staging and making that flow easier, that would already be a great first step at making the flow like easy to understand and could give us a big boost for non-technical users. And then we can see where we can progress, making the happy path, the flow like fast, straightforward, simple, but also offering to like go into different areas that might be like patches.
Okay. You've got the next one.
Yes. I don't think we came to a solution here because I'm still, I posted the video and I don't know whether you saw it, but it seems to me like we now have two bugs. First of all, that the button is not on the project page.
Yes.
But if I go into the Web IDE from the file page, in this case, it will bring up multiple errors. And I think we have to solve both bugs. And I'm not sure if we have to solve them both at the same time or one before the other one.
I don't think we have to solve them at the same time because they'd be separate. Like the way I was thinking about it and the reason I was like, we should just make new issues is because I think they're different parts of the code base and different merge requests. One is like the project view not showing the Web IDE button. That's like a different piece of code or like a different place in the application than like the Web IDE trying to load merge request stuff when you load the web IDE without it knowing if merge requests are enabled on the project or not, which is like a different problem and probably a more complicated like amount of logic to deal with. So I'm fine, like, let's do a bug that like puts the web IDE button back, knowing full well that we're going to error out in the web IDE, like for projects where merge requests are disabled. And like, maybe we get that also done in the same iteration. Like maybe we pump both of these to 12.7 and do them both at the same time, but maybe we just get the web IDE button back in 12.6 and then fix the error loading states in 12.7. Like I just think they need to be separate issues, because otherwise we're going to make this one big, like, web IDE doesn't deal with funky merge request state.
If merge requests are disabled, like, there's no way the user ends up, and Marcel, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no way the user ends up in viewing the web IDE through a merge request. Well, I guess you can hit the drop-down button to like select a merge request or something.
It's not that. It's if merge requests are turned off on the project. Currently, the issue is the web IDE button doesn't show up on the project view.
But if it does, the web IDE also doesn't work.
So then but if you go to file view, you can get into the web IDE. And when you get into the web IDE, it tries to load the merge request tab. Because it's like, oh, let me go see what merge requests exist, or let me see like all the stuff that's related to merge requests. But because merge requests aren't turned on for the project, none of that exists. So like there's no error checking. There's no like state checking for that to make sure that should load.
Yeah. And the bigger problem in the end even is that if you commit your changes and then select start a new merge request, it brings you to a 404 page.
That's good. These are good points. Oh man.
Yeah. You just need some if statements, Paul. Just a few if statements.
How bad know, right? Yeah. You make an assumption that projects have merge requests, but that was too much of an assumption. No, that must have been there for a while. So that's funny. No, that's good to know.
Yeah. So I think we get the web IDE button back, and then we kind of address these other ones as like individual. Like I would address each of them as like individual issues, and maybe like we just relate them all, and like if someone fixes them all in one patch, then that's fine, or one like merge request, that's fine. But like I think they're like sort of 2 or 3 separate problems. Like the merge request tab not loading if merge requests are disabled is like different than the merge request checkbox not working, because in my mind, like if the merge request checkbox doesn't work, then like maybe we should offer a fork op. Maybe there's like a different thing that we do there that says like maybe you need to fork this to your own project, or I don't know. That's probably not correct, but like I feel like we should think about some of these pieces a little bit independently.
Yep, definitely. I'll create separate issues for each of these.
Cool, thank you. All right, Paul.
All right. I know this is why everyone joined this meeting.
Oh God, this one.
So Marcel, I was really wanting to know what you're thinking about this on the spot with no thinking beforehand. I'll share my screen and yes. So I have an awesome community contribution adding. So let me open this for some context of where this is coming from. So this adds in your .gitlab project directory. I could specify completely custom template files. So right now it's kind of possible. We have mostly hard coded. Like there's 4 types of templates: Dockerfile, gitignore, GitLab, CI YAML, and like license or something. But this one is saying, hey, now we can have, I just want to create templated files for anything. We have 2 editors. We have the ACE editor, which adding this extra dropdown was, not fairly trivial, because if I'm creating a new file, I'm just gonna open this up. I can rename the file right here. And so you see these 2 dropdowns. This first dropdown is like, what is the type of template you're doing? And the second one is like, what's the file look like? So for this new MR, what it does is one of the types is going to be custom or something like that. We're still UX deciding. And this one would be like a list of all those custom files that they found on the project here. So it's possible this whole workflow works nicely. And you can imagine like, hey, I want to start a blog post, and I could do that from here. It does not, any part of the web IDE does not support this workflow at all. Because the WebID templating is pretty coupled to, nope, that's not the right one. Where was I? Here I am. The WebID is pretty coupled to, these are the 4 things you can select, and the name of the file is tied to this dropdown here. So, and there's not really any way for me to rename a file from the WebID editor. So some suggestions that came up on, and these are some messy suggestions. So just in the spirit of brainstorming, like here when we're creating a new file, and we have our different templates. You can hit this custom template here, but it's not ideal because that's not really supposed to be the file name. The other idea would be when I talk to myself, I was like, well, that's not really quite right because all these others are file names. Like we could just keep adding to this list. I know Markai's shaking his head. Yeah, Marcel doesn't like this either. He didn't suggest this until I twisted his arm behind his back to about it. But basically, let me just open up the WebID so we can take a look at it. Basically, we don't support template files in a nice way in the WebID. And I thought about this too, where, let me open up the WebID. Like if I need to add a Docker file in a folder or something, I'm not sure if we do that nicely or not. Let me see if we do it nicely. Here I'm in Playground, editing file. Oh yeah, it looks like I can add a Docker file in here. Oh, no, I can't. Well, never mind then.
Oh, that's because it checked the root path.
Oh, that hurts.
Is that the same? I wonder if that's an overlap of the bug that's in production right now.
Probably. So check. This is locally.
But that would they didn't touch this.
So check. I wonder if I do this. If I rename it to Docker file. Yeah. So check this out. All of it to say, like, there's this tight coupling of the name of the file to the template.
Yeah.
And introducing custom templates. I'm gonna pick. Oh, I want to start one of my blog posts, but that's not going to be the name of the file. My name is going to be something specific. And so the editor supports this, but we don't necessarily support this. And from a UX perspective, we don't have support for this at all on the WebID. So I'd really like some thoughts on it. I know we're running at the end of the meeting, so I'm mostly raising awareness.
Do you have a time? Like, is there like an expectation of like time to come back to the WebIDE and like solve this? Because like I guess my point would be, right, like if we're in 12.6 thinking about this, like we have to go through and think about like what would it take to make single file Monaco, and like what are the things that the single file editor could do that like single file Monaco needs to do. Like this feels like one of those things that the single file Monaco needs to do. Yeah, in order to keep that stuff in single file editor. So like, can we think about it through like 12.6? Like you don't need a decision again.
No, it doesn't need to be right now. But it's something I do want to raise awareness on. And yes, because it is related to that as well. And it's also to keep in mind, so we do have a community contribution that's really only going to be effective on the single file editor. So, this new feature that a community contributor is working on is he or she may not really be aware that the single file editor is a dead man walking.
Is it, but is this thing, so like, is the WebID not even, does it not even know about that directory?
So he started implementing it. But the problem is just that the scope is way more than just changing the values here in this dropdown.
So it requires implementation. It's not like if there was a directory that exists, like the WebID would automatically start to pick up on it.
Yeah, no, and the way it's handled in single file editor didn't automatically pick up on it, but it was relatively simple to just add a new one there.
Okay.
Relatively simple. But this one is problems because look what happened when I changed the dropdown. It changed the name of it.
Right.
If I go and change this name, I no longer like. If I was like, oh, well, this is actually my license. Oh, what just happened? Oh, it actually put it on the root directory. Oh.
It actually took you to that file, I think, at the root.
No, I think it created a new one. All right, we're gonna have to try this out again. I did this. Oh yeah, let me rename it to Docker file. All right, boom.
Oh yeah, it creates it in the root for you.
So there's some problems here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think, I don't know, Marcel, your thoughts are, I think maybe we just think about this. Wow, maybe it's twofold. Maybe we need to think about this like entire templating thing inside of the Web IDE in general, because it looks broken. It looks like it has the same behavior bugs that were recently introduced into single file. I don't know if the single file editor got new bugs where you couldn't create stuff in directories anymore. You couldn't create templated files in directories because of a new bug that the Verify team introduced.
Yeah, I suggest a holistic look at this because these bugs are problematic, but there's also new features coming up about this, which is why I was really wanted to hop on this call. There's a new feature about templating is more than this. This is the type of template. It doesn't necessarily need to be the file, which is what's being suggested here. So, yeah.
Maybe we take this on.
Asynchronously on that issue that I linked on there would be really awesome. I signed it to you, Marcel, too. So, and it doesn't need to be handled in this milestone, but if we could maybe have a decision on it on 12.6, so maybe we could start it on 12.7 would be great because the community contributor said he was interested in actually doing whatever needed to be done there.
Okay.
Cool.
I think we can take a look at it.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
I'm trying to. Oh, here's stop share. All right.
Thanks.
That's it for me.
Bye.
I'm hopping off. See ya.
You have anything else, Marcel?
Nope. That's it.
Sounds good. Have a good day.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.